Okay, so given that the nature of existence is suffering, right? Dukkha, suffering, and the removal of suffering or the escape from suffering is the objective that the Buddha states for his philosophy. The issue is that suffering is rooted in tanha, which is desire. So these are the first two noble truths that we see. If you've heard of the Four Noble Truths before, this is a core part of Buddhist teaching, no matter what type of Buddhism we're talking about. And these are the first two. Life is suffering, that one of those marks of existence, is the first noble truth. That suffering is rooted in desire, which isn't, we'll see why, isn't exactly the fullest definition that we can come to for tanha, but there's a limitation to our language, and we'll talk about that. That our goal should be to overcome desire if our objective ultimately is to escape suffering. And that there is a path, an eightfold path to achieving that goal. So these are the Four Noble Truths. Because life is suffering and suffering is rooted in desire, you should desire to overcome your desires. Notice that use of the word desire there in two different ways. You should desire to overcome tanha, which is a different type of desire. And the Buddha is going to give you a path for that process. So, this first noble truth, all life is suffering. All thinking beings experience suffering. Pain, unhappiness, dissatisfaction, birth, illness, aging, death, all these points of life come with suffering. These bring negative emotions, and we tend to want happiness, but suffering reduces our happiness in some sense. So what are we to do with this, that first noble truth? We need to recognize that it's caused by tanha. Now notice what type of desire, because one of the eightfold paths is going to be right ambition, right desire. So it's the craving for pleasure and the clinging to this life. It's rooted in the impermanence and fickleness of our own minds. It's attachment to things and feelings that we want, and a fear for things that we don't like. So it has to do with our tastes and our cravings and our pleasures and our desire to avoid pain in the immediate sense leads to deep sufferings. So that second noble truth kind of mapped out there in more detail. To end desire is to end suffering. If you haven't a desire for pleasure, a craving, then you can't have the suffering of not fulfilling the craving. If you overcome the fear of some discomfort, then you won't suffer when you experience the discomfort. It's the ending the ignorance at the root of cravings that breaks the working of karma and ceases this cycle. Here again, note the connection to the roots in Hinduism. Hinduism's goal is to escape the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, is to escape samsara. And in Buddhism, there's also, you're trapped in samsara through karma, so you want to escape your karma and cease the cycle. So the fourth noble truth is the eightfold path. This is the path towards nirvana. You want to be free from your delusions and your cravings about the nature of the self and reality. If you understand that you have no self, that what you experience and think of as reality is illusion, and set aside, lay aside, and detach yourself from all these various ambitions and desires and pleasures and fear of suffering and fear of hurt and fear of discomfort, if you can rid yourself of that tanha, those types of desires, then you'll be free from real suffering. And the way to do this is to follow the Eightfold Path. So what is that path? This comes from the Deer Park sermon. It says, there are two extremes, O bhikkhus, that's his followers, which a holy man should avoid. The habitual practice of self-indulgence, which is vulgar and profitless, and the habitual practice of self-mortification, which is painful and equally profitless. So this is that call to the middle way. There's a middle path discovered by the Tathagata, that's the one who has reached nirvana. A path which opens the eyes and bestows understanding, which leads to peace of mind and to the higher wisdom, to full enlightenment or awakening, to nirvana. Verily it is this noble eightfold path, that is to say, right views, right? You see the world correctly, you understand the world that's escaping that ignorance. Right aspirations. It's not that you're devoid of desires, it's that you detach yourself from lower desires. You detach yourself from basic pleasure pain principles, and you desire the one thing, the one reality. You desire to escape all, to see reality as reality. So to do that you need right speech. Remember those basic rules of conduct in the sense of you should always speak truth. Right conduct having to do with those other aspects, right? Your sexual purity, dietary restrictions. Therefore, that would lead to you need right livelihood. You can't be making money as a butcher or a soldier if you're not supposed to kill anything ever. You can't be making money as a prostitute or a pimp if you're, not supposed to be living sexually impure. You can't be a bartender, right? Because you're not supposed to drink alcoholic beverage, and you should be compassionate and helping others to escape these vain pleasures. So then there's right effort. Right? You need to pour yourself into this. Needs to be your goal. Right mindfulness. Mindfulness has to do with living in the moment, in the present, being aware of where you are right now in this moment, and right contemplation. So this comes from the Deer Park sermon. This is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths. It's the Noble Eightfold Path, right? We have them, and this is these all build upon each other, and in some sense the argument has been made that they agree on another aspect that's not one of the Eightfold Path, but we see it in one of the in one of the three jewels, right? The Sangha, the community of the monks. So to do this really well, there needs to be right association. You need to surround yourselves with others that are doing this. It's not part of the Eightfold Path, but it's kind of implicit in the sense of the Sangha, the community of monks. And it's implicit in the way that the Buddha lived his life after his awakening under the Bodhi tree, in a community of monks. This is another look at the Eightfold Path and kind of the way it breaks down. So there's aspects of wisdom, right understanding, and right aspirations. Aspects of action, moral action, right speech, right action, right livelihood. And then aspects of concentration, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. We can see these also in some basic teachings, some basic kind of things you should do and not do, right? So know the truth, say nothing to hurt others, practice meditation, control your thoughts, resist evil, free your mind of evil, work for the good of others, respect life. These things are rooted in those 5 practices. They're rooted in the Eightfold Path, and this is kind of the heart of the Buddhist message and method. And in many ways, Buddhism is a methodology. It's a pursuit of the ridding oneself of the desire for pleasures in order to achieve an awareness of an awakening to the realities that you have no soul, no self, that life is suffering, and the efforts to overcome that suffering. So there again, it's that methodology. It's much more of a practice. It is rooted in those metaphysical realities, but apophatically so. You approach reality through a form of negation.